Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of your Brains Coach podcast. My name is Angela Shurina. I'm your host, I'm your Brains Coach, and it is my job here to bring to you all the best, cutting edge, most useful, effective brain, body, and also productivity tools so you could take control of your thoughts, of your emotions, of your actions, and your calendar and your to-do list so you could create the life, the business, the relationships that you absolutely love. Today, folks, as you guessed, we are doing a book study, a book that I realized I need to reread. So the book, Slow Productivity, The Lost Art of Accomplishing More Without Burnout. I believe that's the subtitle. Book by Cal Newport. He previously wrote the book Deep Work that I'm also a huge fan of. I was actually given this book as a gift, and it still stands on my desk as a reminder of what truly matters, not sending each other email or going through a lot of meetings, doing work around work. What is in the book, Cal Newport calls pseudo productivity is in his new book, Slow Productivity. It reminded me, by having this, also his previous book, Deep Work, on my desk, it reminds me of learning how to focus and how to prioritize the important work, the work that only I can create in this world, the work that will change the world in some way, make the world better in some way. And even though communicating with each other, using email and meetings and working on projects together, it is all important. But we as humanity, as knowledge workers and people who work on or dedicated or inspired to deliver some value into this world, we need to figure out how to balance our communication and doing, again, the work around work with moving things forward in a meaningful way. So we do create better things and improve the world and move the causes sooner and faster forward instead of, again, emailing each other. I want to tell you a story before I jump into practical concepts from the book that I believe are the most essential for you guys to take control of your productivity. And instead of feeling like you just shuffling stuff around, doing work around road, actually moving major stuff forward. So I'm going to tell you a story that was months ago. I started looking in different venture studios for partnering on delivering my training into startups, to the founders and the teams. Those a lot of times young teams that are driven but lack a lot of knowledge around managing their own workload, managing themselves, managing their focus, their strategic thinking and priorities. But anyhow, so I decided to partner with venture studios, and I got positive reply from a few of them. And I started working, almost started. We were at the beginning of our work together. We were about to sign a partnership, and every Monday we would have a meeting at the beginning to discuss the next steps. And after a couple of meetings, I started having this feeling that we just talking to each other and nothing gets moved. I'm like, okay, maybe it's just the beginning. They're also at the beginning of their vision, of their project. So let it be there. And then I started to give a hint to my partner on the other side of my computer that, we should have more precise agenda when what is happening and what is the responsibility of me as a partner in this whole vision and in every project. And the further along we moved, the more small things started to accumulate. The founder would have these different ideas about different projects with female founders or of other project they had with the venture studio and other partners in the ecosystem. And it started to feel like I started to all of a sudden manage or about to start managing a lot more things that I signed up for. And I brought it up to the founder, and he said, well, what we envisioned for our partners is to be equal participants in all of these activities that the studio does. And I told him, well, that's not what I signed up for. I've developed the training and developing certain concepts, and I want to be an expert in that niche, and I want to provide this service to the best of my ability to the partners that I'm working with. I'm not here to become a managing partner of everything that your studio does that is still not clearly defined. So in my head, there was this alarm raising all of my senses to the cause, like, you are spending a lot more time for activities that are not your core. A core of your expertise, core of your practice. So you need to communicate that. So that was happening in my head. And so I communicated to the partner. And as I suspected already at that point, they had other expectations, at least for me, because as I realized, they also had other partners who didn't really participate in our meetings. And I'm like, why am I the person who is for whichever reason, starting to manage all of this? And I communicated that, and then we parted our ways. And maybe in their eyes, I was the one who was the weird ones who didn't want to take on more. But I felt really at peace with my decision. And after this whole thing finished, I'm like, good job, Angela. You actually stood your ground and you understood what you were trying to do, what is your core focus, what is your core expertise, the vision. And you realize that this project was not aligned with that, and people were expecting from you something that you were not prepared to give. And so the project finished, and with that, yes, there was also, part of me, but you already invested so much time in this project, sunk cost fallacy. The tendency of our brain not wanting to give up things and relationships and projects that we invest even some time into. So my brain was telling me, well, but you already invested into that. But then to prevent that fallacy, what is recommended actually to look into the future. Yes, you wasted, so to speak, some time and resources on that project, but looking forward, how many things are you going to be missing out on because you're saying yes to the thing that doesn't feel right? And so I parted the ways with the studio of, yes, probably losing some money, but I also realized that moving forward, that actually going to distract me from bigger vision for myself, for my business, and yes, bigger money. But anyhow, they thought that I was missing out on the opportunity, and I actually felt really amazing about my decision because I did not want to do a lot of managing of stuff of other people. I wanted to deliver great service and work based on my core expertise. And the reason why I told you this story, because this is what slow productivity is all about. It's about choosing fewer projects to work on, because that would mean less work around work. Here is another concept that might be counterintuitive to what you hear in the media from a lot of entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, so entrepreneurs at the beginning of their journey. You would hear, or have a lot of businesses, have a lot of income streams. And even though at some point it might become true for you that you, with other people on your team, in your business, might be able to manage different income streams, so to speak. But when you are at the beginning, when you are one or a couple, or maybe 3 to 5 people team, and you decide to take on a lot of, or, a few sources of income, maybe a few business ideas, what you're actually going to be increasing exponentially is the work needed to get done to manage all of this stuff. What I mean by that, imagine if you have one business like I do right now. and you have only one business to set up, you have only one tax record to take care of, you have only one branding, marketing strategy, social media channel to take care of, the people, the project you talk about, or the project that you're pitching to other people, to other companies, the project that you're talking about, all of this is just one thing. And the work that surrounds that one project, one business, is contained around that thing. And now imagine you have 5 business ideas and things that you're working on. Now you have additional work around all of these projects, from emails to meetings to perhaps clients, to managing maybe marketing and social media and all the different resources that are involved in this project. And you won't even notice how all of a sudden all this work around work actually takes a huge chunk of your day, every day of your week. And at the end of the week, of the months, of the year, you're not really moving anything forward. You're just doing a bunch of emails, meetings, stuff that comes with additional project. And again, at the end of the year, you're going to look back and you're like, well, I did a bunch of stuff. I was working all the time, like legitimately working all the time, but I have almost nothing to show for it in terms of my work, something that I've created, something that I can sign my name under, something that people will know me for, something that will improve my skill set and my expertise. So that is why a lot of this advice have a lot of income streams. It might be applicable, but to a very specific situation for usually bigger businesses who have a lot of different divisions and people under them to manage all of this complexity. You as one person, as a solopreneur or entrepreneur with a smaller team, or just not having resources to manage complexity, you will not be able to move anything forward if you focus on several projects. And when I consult and when I coach my clients, entrepreneurs and business owners, and they ask me this question, Angela, should I do one thing or focus on these 2 projects, on 3 projects? And I always give them this picture of a magnifying glass and sun rays going through that. And you probably saw it on the internet many, many times. And on the other side, there is a piece of wood or a piece of paper that starts burning because that magnifying glass focuses all the sun energy. And when we don't have this magnifying glass, nothing happens. Nobody notices. And that's exactly what happens to a lot of entrepreneurs at the beginning. Yes, as an entrepreneur, you're very curious. You have a lot of passions, curiosities, and you want to approach all of the ideas. But it's like having all your energy, all your resources that are also limited. Guys, spread it all over the place like a sprinkler and nobody really notice, and you're not moving anything in major ways. That's why focusing is so important. And this book, Slow Productivity, folks, it talks about this concept, how each project, smaller or bigger, even in the same business. Like, for example, you have one business, I have one coaching business. If I decide to focus on everything, and let's say I'm gonna work with corporates, and I'm gonna work on additional project around health and fitness with some gyms, and I'm going to be managing something else. Even in one company, in one business, if you don't have your core focus, like for me now, it's team training, it's corporate training, you'll be doing a lot of additional work around all of these additional small projects. And so back to your entrepreneurial curiosities and to the book and to the clients I coach and to myself, you want to have as much focus as possible on as fewer things as possible, because what it does automatically, it reduces the work around work. consumption of your time and of your resources, instead of again doing a bunch of emails and meetings and looking up stuff and social media and different kinds of research and addressing different needs of different clients. You see, it's not just good for business to focus on one type of client, of one type of message, of one type of product. It's not only good for business, it's also good for your schedule, because now all of a sudden you need to manage fewer things. You can dedicate more resources to those fewer things, make them better, and create more peace, more time for yourself, creating more results, and at the same time also more profits into your business. So slow productivity, this book is all about that. How to accomplish more without burnout and without overtaxing your schedule and yourself and feeling like you just always overwhelmed and have more to do than you can possibly manage. So slow productivity, it's a game plan to replace overload. And it's not some system that is based on no evidence. No, it actually again talks about those specific aspects of our work as knowledge, cognitive workers, somebody who produce the value with our brain. It talks to the core principles, like you onboard a lot more projects, well, you'll have to manage a lot more projects, and that means a lot more emails, that means a lot more other stuff that comes with each additional project, and less resources to your core thing that people actually might know you for. And also it allows you less and less time to master that one thing and have a chance to become one of a kind provider of that service, of that expertise, of that specific talent, or this specific, skill set of value that you're bringing to other people. Focusing on fewer things allow you the time, the resources to become exceptional. And that's what the book speaks to. The book speaks about writers, prolific writers who got a lot of recognition, the Nobel laureates, of historical figures like Benjamin Franklin, but also business people who realized while they were chasing all this multiple income streams idea, they spread themselves too thin and were having too much to do with not much of a lot more results, and definitely not a lot more quality of life to show for all of these additional income streams. Actually, especially at the beginning, but for majority of people and businesses for their entire existence, you'll do much better financially and quality life wise and having more time when you focus on fewer things. Not only you'll do the best job, but also you'll get the best payment, the best outcome, and you'll deliver more value to other people. So do fewer things. That's the first concept. The three concepts that the book is built around are: do fewer things, work at your own pace, and obsess over quality. So the more, I believe, the practical takeaway, like I did, you'll get from the first part of the book that, the first part of the book actually just introduces the concept why this idea of slow productivity versus pseudo productivity, basically doing a bunch of stuff, not summing up to anything, like emails, meetings, right? You do stuff, but at the end of the day, like, what have I done? Not much. So the book is a rebellion against that kind of productivity for all of us. So at the beginning of the book, the concept I introduced, the history, how we ended up in this pseudo productivity world where people do a bunch of stuff, end up burned out, and still have nothing to show for it. So the book is a rebellion against that, and it introduces the history, how we came from farming and more physical labor where you could actually measure the products produced per unit of time, and that was the definition of productivity. But now, how do you manage productivity for knowledge workers, for people who work with their brain? How do you manage productivity? hours worked? Well, if you spend your hours emailing and in meetings and not really adding value, and you're not that effective with your communication, is it really productivity? Is it really value, or just staying busy, right? So the question of productivity becomes a very fuzzy thing. And so at the beginning of the book, Cal Newport talks about that, and he strives to figure out what is the better definition of productivity for people like ourselves who work with our brains, who do not produce products or tools per unit of time. And the amount of hours we did and how busy we appeared to be, that what caused this whole era of overwhelm and the culture where working for the sake of working as much as possible has been put almost on pedestal, even though a lot of the people who burn out, again, do not produce a lot of quality work, but instead just busy doing the work around work with unclear priorities, fuzzy focus, no goals, and no meaningful way of measuring products towards the meaningful goals. And getting back to that story of venture studio I started working with, that's where I also felt. I feel like they had no clarity, no focus, a bunch of stuff that they were thinking about, and I was supposed to somehow figure out how to manage myself in it. And if that was my main thing, and I was one of the co-founders, yes, I would dedicate time to manage that and figure things out. But because that was not my idea of how I wanted to partner at this stage of my career, I'm like, no, thank you, but no. Back to the slow productivity, Cal Newport, and doing things better, or creating more meaningful things in your life and in your work. So 3 major concepts in the book after the introduction are: do less things, work at your own pace, and obsess over quality. So do less things, we already started talking about that a lot, how less projects allow you to actually deliver more quality on each of those projects, will allow you to get better things to other people, bring more value, get more things for yourself, build more results, and also have more time. Isn't that fantastic? And one of the ways this way of working is going to do that is reducing by a lot this work around work things. One of the concept also that is introduced in the book with this do less things umbrella is limiting the big, as I mentioned just right now, limiting the amount of big projects that you work on, because that will generate additional management stuff, a lot of it. But then also containing the small stuff, those emails and meetings, but then also responsibilities and things you do around your house and in your life, looking into all the different ways you can outsource decisions, eliminate decisions, batch things that you do. Like, for example, if you have to check your email, if you need to do certain amount of meetings, if you have to attend to other things in your life, social, family related, etc. Look at your schedule, and that's actually what I'm going to be doing over the weekend. Look at your schedule and see where you can batch those things. Because what also the book talks about, and in deep work, Cal Newport also talked about that, what research and science shows us is our brain works better and gets more effective as we work in chunks, in blocks of time, and we batch similar activities together. So, for example, we decide to spend an hour a day on going through all of the email instead of having to check email here and there and everywhere, and your thinking is always going to be fractured. Our brain doesn't do its best work, and you have to then spend more time working on other bigger projects. And so what could have done, let's say, 6 hours of solid work, now with the emails sprinkled and meetings all over the place. Now it's actually going to take 12, 18, or maybe more hours because you're going to be jumping from one project to the other. Our brain does not do its best job, not the most effective for sure, not the most genius for sure, not the best insights you're not going to get when you fracture your time spent on any single project. And Cal also proposes quite a few tools and different ways of working when it comes to team collaboration, which this actually part of the book I'm going to be exploring more because I'm going to be working with a lot more teams. He proposes how to organize teamwork so you can still collaborate effectively and yes, have meetings, for example, instead of emailing each other back and forth for tens, sometimes hundreds times per day. So sometimes it does make sense to get everyone on the meeting and explore the options, who does what and when everything needs to get done, and align everyone on each other's schedule so you move the projects forward effectively. And then also he proposes a few tools on how to, again, organize email communication, some ideas around how to make other people do more work. Like if you, for example, want me to collaborate with you on some project, you first have to be very clear about what exactly you want me to do and what kind of resources you need from me. So it's not 10 emails back and forth, but instead one email telling me everything that I need to get done for you to move your things forward. Also, speaking about collaboration and email and meetings, what I notice now, having the experience of working with teams and companies, is that majority of people lack clarity, lack the destination piece of any collaboration or any interaction with other person. What I mean by that is, again, back to that venture studio example that I had. When we communicated, I felt like there never was a goal, a clear vision of where we are trying to arrive collectively. And for me, that felt very discomforting. I'm like, what are we doing here? Why are we emailing each other? What's the outcome? When? And I always try to pressure it, like, what is the result? By what day we need to get this done, so I can then align all of my workload based on that timeline, based on the result that we're trying to achieve. And so what I want you guys to also pay attention to in your communication, in how you design your day, your week, your months. Are you intentional? Do you have the goal in mind? However, the goal can change, the timeline can change, the world is not as predictable, but at the beginning, you still have to have a rough estimation of what you want to achieve and when you want to get it done and what the end result looks like. Because otherwise, it's going to be very hard to manage anything down the stream. From emails to meetings to communication with other people, if you don't have the end goal in mind. And I feel like in a lot of companies, especially younger companies, especially startups and founders, this piece is really missing. Bigger companies as well, they accumulate a lot of people and not always at all they're successful at giving the training around creating clarity in communication, in project managing, how to be strategic thinkers and doers, thinking and planning from the future. A lot of companies do not provide enough clarity, and because of that, people end up doing a bunch of stuff, being overloaded, being busy, not moving the most important, the right things forward. And what I wanted to emphasize here is whenever you communicate, whenever you collaborate, whenever you are planning, make sure that you have clarity around that end destination. What are we trying to achieve? And how are we going to know that we achieved it? And what is the time frame? And then also, of course, like what the resources that we need, etc. But that's going to become much easier once you have the clarity of the destination of where you're trying to arrive. Another example that I actually wanted to share you before we wrap up this part of our book study, Slow Productivity. In the book, there was an example where the author, Cal Newport, proposes us to choose between a project, writing a report, or organizing a meeting, an event. And he asks, like, what do you think will be easier and will take, well, not easier, but will take less of your time? And I actually, having organized events and having had a lot of collaborations and also doing a lot of reports and book writing and creating all kinds of long-form content, I knew right away, like, writing a report, it's going to be so much, quote unquote, easier. Well, it's going to consume less of your time than we're trying to organize an event. And why is that? Well, because the more all kinds of communication you have, the more you have to bring people, different players on board, the more you'll have to figure out how to collaborate, the more work around work is going to be generated. And even though organizing an event sounds like a fun thing to do, but when it comes to work around work and all the unpredictable time wasters that you're going to encounter compared to writing a report. Yes, writing a report, you'll need to do research, you need to think, you'll need to figure a lot of things out. But writing a report requires very little collaboration. And even though it does seem like a more difficult piece of work, it will require less of your time and less of time wasted for sure. And the bonus of that is when you write a good report and you bring unique value, you're actually gonna be rewarded a lot more than for organizing event. And that speaks to the idea that slow productivity, folks, it's about doing less, seemingly doing less work, but it's about accomplishing more and becoming a to-go person, a known person for specific problem, specific solution, becoming an expert, very often world-known expert who does one or very few things exceptionally well, and you get rewarded a lot more because when people think of this problem, they're gonna go to you. And that's what slow productivity is also about: developing your niche, developing your expertise, which will, with you seemingly doing less, bring more results and rewards to you, and will make you wealthier, will make your job and your business more lucrative, again, without you having to have a lot of complexity, managing a lot of stuff and spreading yourself too thin. So slow productivity, it's indeed about accomplishing more, because I also believe, like Cal Newport does, that accomplishing more is about creating meaningful change, is adding to the quality of your life. It's not about just sticking off your calendar or your to-do list as many items as possible, occupying every single hour of your day. And heck, I'm actually a very curious person. I love learning a lot. I love doing a lot of things, but I do not like to be wasting a lot of my time doing work that feels so meaningless, like back and forth emails with people who have no clarity and did not develop a practice of clarifying and focusing what they say, what they do, and how they structure their day. Like, I have no desire of wasting my time with on that kind of communication and project management. So slow productivity. The most important thing that I want you to take away from today's podcast, guys, hopefully with the examples, with the stories, you were able to understand that the most important thing for you is to learn, first of all, figure out your priorities at work and in your life. Then learn how to focus on those priorities and get back to why it's important to focus on fewer things. Because when you focus on many things, you'll do a lot but accomplish nothing. And very often you will build a life that you don't enjoy at all. What I want you to understand that by learning how to focus, you'll also create more time and you create more results that actually matter, that give to the world more and give you back more. And the way to do it is learning how to say no to a bunch of different projects that you might be excited about. It's about learning how to not just plan the big rocks, the big projects, but also realize that with each project onboarded, you're going to be generating a lot of additional work and management that will actually take away from the quality of the work that you deliver on all of these projects. So by adding more, you're actually stealing and you're delivering less and less value. And then I want you to think about how to be, and I'm going to be working on this myself this weekend, reconsidering my schedule, how you can be intentional about all the small things that occupy your schedule. Look at your schedule, and if it's fractured and stuff is all over the place, your deep work and your meetings and your emails and your social media and your different errands, if it's all over the place, think about where you can bring more alignment and more clarity and more structure so you work in blocks of time and you're able to deliver more quality in each of those blocks. So you generate a lot more clarity versus a lot more mess, and you produce again a lot more value. You're rewarded for that, and you move forward each year with a new big accomplishment in your work and in your life. That being said, pick up the book. We might come back to this book again and again and again as I'm going to be rereading it, because there is a lot of practical stuff again from managing your own projects. Like for example, one of the last one that I want to share with you. Before taking on a project, consider the time that it's going to take for this project, but also consider all the time that you'll need to manage that project, communicate with other people, figuring things out, doing the errands around the project, all the management stuff. And realize that probably the time that you thought that this project is going to take is at least double. And so then look at your calendar and see, do you actually have that time to dedicate the time to this project that it really requires? I love this phrase from the book: dealing with the reality of time, not a gut feeling. And I'm guilty of that myself and working on it. Sometimes I do take on project and then I'm like, oh my God, that actually requires a lot more time. Usually Cal proposes, and I agree with him, double the time you think the project will take, and look at your calendar and see if you actually have that time. And if you do, and that project feels important, then move forward. And if you don't, then it's probably a good idea to put your project into the line of projects and ideas and only pursue this project when you finish the other project and you can now dedicate more time. So Cal proposes this pull system for managing projects, not push. And the difference is, instead of without too much thinking, putting more on your schedule, you first look at your schedule and project you're working on. And if there is no sufficient time to manage everything that a new project requires, then you put it in the queue and you only put it on your active schedule of what you're working on, only when there is a free spot available to take on a new project. And that's how you end up not overloaded, but instead delivering great quality of work on each and every one of your projects. I hope, folks, that you found this useful and it will produce some deeper thinking about your projects and your work, and you look at your schedule over this weekend and you think deeper about, okay, where I can say no to things and I can structure things better and I can dedicate more time more uninterrupted time to my bigger project, and where I can eliminate the small tasks and batch them and automate and delegate them and remove them so I can produce more quality to the world. So I am rewarded more for that exceptional quality. And so I do have the time to create better quality of life. So Cal Newport, Slow Productivity, the lost art of accomplishing without burnout. Pick it up, read it. It will be a transformational book. I know that. I'm going to be reading it. I realized I need to read it 1 or 2 times, and this weekend is definitely looking at my schedule. So pick up the book, read it, become the person of quality and doing fewer things but accomplishing more, creating more time, more quality of life. And with that, have an awesome weekend, and I'll speak to you on Monday or Tuesday with a different book study. So stay tuned. Be slowly productive, accomplish more without burnout and overwhelm.